of July and 5th of July. I think a lot
Happy
of people are off
4th
the
of
next
July.
few days. Yeah, they are. Happy 4th of July, Independence Day.
Did you go
We're
into
the
a
freest
river?
people in the world. Free speech is alive and well. So, hey,
Drone show. I was at Ocala, had a drone show last night.
drones are amazing things, especially looking at properties and hunting properties, and you can just see everything.
It was like 152, maybe more, maybe 500 drones up there. Made Ocala like a horse was running in the air. It was really cool.
500 drones. That is cool. I need. Everyone needs a personal. Well, they don't. They just drones are cool. But I love.
You didn't know I'm a drone pilot. You probably didn't know that about me.
No, Nigel's got a drone.
Look at that.
Those things. That
was all drones last night. Look at that.
All Cali. There you go.
That was the end all deal, and then they did like a horse. Look at the horse.
That is cool. So was that a virtual thing?
No, it was live. We went out to the park. It was just like fireworks. Like you go out, it had a whole thing. You waited for it, and they had bands, the whole thing, and then these drones came up from the tennis courts, and
Cool.
and it was the coolest thing. It hovered over this big lake, and they made it was because the horses don't like the noises is real bad, and then over half of the people that are residents of Ocala are actually vets too. So they haven't never done much of a fireworks display as much on the 4th. In the past, and so this was a nice like in between. So it's a good thing. It was neat to do.
Cool. Yeah, the fireworks not in the state parks either, especially over here.
Yeah.
It's kind of dry.
Fire danger.
Yeah, exactly. All right, hey, smash the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. Allow notifications on your Android or iPhone. Remember, you can hear us live on Twitter, X, Twix, Facebook, and YouTube. You get that link in the morning. That we text a lot of people, but it goes out. A lot of people just come in from other places. That's how you watch the show.
Follow us.
Tell friends, family, and neighbors. Follow us.
You get notifications. That's everyone else. If you're watching this right now, just come back to where you're watching this right now. But you can click follow, or subscribe.
Hear ye. All come and watch Sidelines. Hey, we got the roundtable, Friday College Football Roundtable. Doug Dean, Frank Duffy, Dave Tompkins off today working on special project. One of the best journalists in the South, Phillip Marshall, will join us around half past the hour. We're going to get into the big picture of what's going on in the SEC and the reverberations around college football with Texas and OU coming into the SEC, where he thinks they'll stand and stack up against all these other teams that have been here for a long, long time. It's going to be a great, great show. We'll be right back. Going to be a great one.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right. Let's see. I know Doug Dean's going to be on about 15 after. Phillip Marshall at 30 after. And here comes Audrey after all we went through, like looking at me like, huh? And I said, we got it worked out. But Brendan, we've had a lot going on this week, man, doing double duty. That's fun. It's not work. It's just fun. It's like swimming. Doing our show in the morning and again at night, the Buddy Martin show. I've been doing a lot of research. I will say this, that the print in these football magazines is tiny. It's just, it's ridiculous. I mean, it gives you I can read it fine, but it's just, you got to have a bright light.
Well, think about it now. I mean, you're used to, you grow used to the device. You can change font sizes. You can change the light. You can change it. So, it's different when we, back in the day, you just didn't think about those things, right? So now we get this thing. I love the printed product. I wish we would print more stuff. I think it's nice to have it in your hands. Gator Bait was a magazine for 40 some years before we ever took it over, and people used to put Gator Bait
at one point.
Yeah, Gator Bait magazine. You put it in your back pocket and take it to the game. So, it's nice to have that in your hand. I think people like that, especially when you have pictures and stuff. Because as a kid, I mean, you like to take that stuff out, cut it out, put it on your wall.
I know some schools out there have stopped doing online learning with laptops because they realized the kids weren't doing their homework.
Yeah,
the cheating is worse than it's ever been. I mean, there's more kids getting 32s and 35s and 36s on the ACT than we've ever seen. But I'll tell you something, they ain't that smart. They're basically myopically. They can take a test. My online learning. I like to have the printed product like this one here, the Lindy's. This is the national preview, but they'll be coming out with their, more regional, which is a lot more in depth.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna get Lindy Davis. He's really nice. I really like him. Lives in Birmingham. I think this is their 43rd or 44th year to do the magazine. I'll see if I can get him on here for next Friday, because talking about putting together a football magazine, Brendan, in this day and age, you got to have a lot of electronic supplements.
They're the standard too. For Lindy's has always, even as a kid, I literally waited for it in the mail. Like I knew when it was coming. Like I knew, and so like my Lindy's, my Beck's, because I had my baseball stuff, so I had to do all my cards. Remember? And then I'd pull all my cards out, and then I'd see how much they're worth, and then we'd go through the whole thing. It was really, that was a part of my childhood. Like that was an exciting time.
No, I would go to Tobacco Corner Newsroom in Memphis, at Poplar and Mendenhall, to get all my magazines and the newspapers. You got tons of out-of-town newspapers Sunday mornings, and you just see all these college football fans from everywhere just crammed in there to get the deal. I think that reading online, I mean, we do it a lot, but I still, like you say, I like to have, and I read things, and then I write down on paper what I read, because when you apply it from your brain to paper, the motion, you learn better. You just repetition is the mother of all skill.
Yeah, it's recall. It's how you learn things by rote. As mom would say, and a lot. Yeah, and I did. I did.
That's true. That is true.
That's what they call it. They're learning by rote.
That's exactly what it is.
I did a lot of acting in high school and some in college for plays. That's how we learned lines, was to write it out. Because we had some lines you'd have you'd get done with a play. Oh God, I had something like 500 lines. And you think, how did I remember? But how do we remember it all? But it's by rote. You write. It's amazing what the mind can do when you apply it. Like that. Look, my kid goes both ways. She gets the online because they've got and then they have the hardcore interactive. So she comes on with the big book bag and all that stuff as she's going on to soccer. Hey, look, Doug Dean looks like he's coming in from
Doug somewhere. Hey, let me, he's at Lake Martin. Let me tell you something interesting. Audrey works with children 5 and under, testing them for different programs. She said children, and Doug knows this because Doug's got 3 daughters and 2 grandchildren now. Audrey says working with these young children that she does with over here, and she's got a master's in elementary education, a degree in psychology. Young children are supposed to they need to hear 21,000 words a day to work their brain and to be. So when we shut the schools down during the virus lockdowns, a lot of kids were just isolated. And what we have now is people just do everything online. When you interact, like this round table here, again, Dave Tompkins on special assignment over in Charleston. Frank Duffy is kind of like Daniel Simpson Day, whereabouts unknown, has no grade point average this morning. We don't know where he is. But Doug, this is we were talking about online versus the printed product, like Lindy's magazine. And I'm going to get Lindy Davis and see if he can come on with us next week. What do you like better? I like both, but I still like writing things down. Doug, can you hear us?
I didn't know if you were putting that question to me.
Yeah, sorry.
The 21,000 words. God, I'm watching these little these 1-year-olds process life and how rapidly they learn. They both started crawling on within like a week of each other, and one of them's he was trying to walk at 1-year-old. So, but the language, wow. I will double down on what you're saying about the development and learning of kids. Somehow this has something to do with sports, but so as most people know, but it's not talked about a lot, the learning of being fluent in a language, the brain form, the easiest time to do that is under 3 or 4 years old, or starting at 3 or 4. It's just interesting. So we should arguably, here in the US of A, it wouldn't be a bad thing if kids from a very young age had the chance to learn 2 languages.
Yeah.
Practically speaking, probably learning Spanish and English,
no question,
with one being primary, would make the most sense economically, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I'm just saying, when we look at the magazines, Doug, what's better than being at Lake Martin or down on the Gulf Coast or on the Spring River reading a football magazine, having a cold beer, eating some West Indies crab salad or some good ribs or some whatever.
There's always food associated with it, Doug, if you've ever noticed.
Really
in his fantasies.
100%.
Every Rob fantasy has food in it.
Well, he's a smart man, because a lot of things can happen to you, but as long as your digestive tract is working, food is still around. And people will donate food to you. Hey, when we get into the show and talking sports, it's July, so we're in countdown territory for college football. Isn't that exciting?
57 days, man. And Doug, I wanted to throw some stuff at you. Phillip Marshall's going to be on in just a few minutes.
Can't wait. What a guy.
He's incredible.
What a legend. A legend.
Yeah. And his memory and his repertoire of information is off the charts. I want to throw some stuff at you. Looking around the league, and we don't talk as much about Missouri, but here it is. This Eli Drinkwitz, last year they go 11-2, beat Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. You've got Brady Cook coming back. 46% of his passes last year, 20 yards or more downfield, he completed them. That's powerful. He's got Luther Burden III coming back as a wide receiver. Is it because Missouri's kind of out there that they're not getting mentioned as much among some of the other teams? Because Missouri and Texas, I know Texas has more talent, but if they had to play the first game of the year, I'd take Missouri.
Yeah, and this time of year on your show, we traditionally talk about who's the landslide dominant favorite, or we call it chalk. And you got to go with that. Georgia, 1A, Georgia, 1B, Alabama. But there's more variation introduced to the process, no pun intended, with Coach Saban, who really popularized the word process. Don't watch the score in the game. Don't watch the scoreboard. Just focus on your process. Well, the process, and it's nobody's fault. Eventually, Saban was going to retire, right? But DeBoer is there. He certainly brings although the resume is a short number of years in the true big time of college football, it's a little foolish to call him anything but an outstanding coach at this point. But Alabama's, they had the roster shuffled a little with the portal, in no small part because Nick Saban retired. But DeBoer appears to have restocked that, maybe not completely to his liking, and first-year coaches deal with that. So you'd have to call Georgia 1A because of the stability. On the other hand, Georgia, we will find out pretty early in the season when they travel to Tuscaloosa, September 28th, night game in Bryant-Denny, how do they deal with life after Brock Bowers and life after Ladd McConkey? Now, and I realize they recruit lights out, but sometimes that early in the season, even 5-star wide receivers or portal receivers need a little time to be able to win those contested balls, 50-50 balls. So I'm calling Georgia 1A, Alabama 1B. Then you got Mizzou I would say Mizzou, Texas, not Oklahoma, if you ask me. Maybe they'll surprise me. And we'll know a lot about Oklahoma on September 28th. Mizzou, Texas, Ole Miss. There's my 2A, 2B, 2C. Which of those? And that's in some ways more interesting than Alabama and Georgia. They'll dominate the headlines because of Saban retiring. But can Kirby win it again? He didn't last year. So to me, after that, then you got teams, be it Auburn, LSU, you could name others that could have a chance to rise up and at a minimum be a fly in the ointment, if not have a pretty big year themselves. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right on that. And Alabama
and Florida. I didn't mean to leave Florida out. You never know with them.
Well, and I've been digging in a lot with Florida. I got to do the Buddy Martin show with Brendan Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night this week while Buddy was on vacation. And Buddy jumped in a little bit each night. But I look at Alabama's offensive line. You know, Caden Proctor was there. He went to Iowa. He came back. I'll tell you another one. I saw this kid play in high school from Northridge High School in Tuscaloosa against Paul W. Bryant High School out in Cottondale a couple of years ago. Wilkin Formby. I know, and he's well, what's great about him, speaking of food, is he's the grandson of the founder of Taco Casa. I just thought I got to throw that in. But Wilkins 6'8", athlete, 300 plus. Alabama's offensive line this year could be scary good. And I look at what happened. Everybody's so caught up in what happened with Texas beating Alabama last year, guys, in Bryant-Denny Stadium. But again, in the last, you don't sleep on Missouri. When you've got Brady Cook coming back and Luther Burden III. Now they lost their defensive coordinator. Blake Beck was hired away to LSU in one of the biggest contracts ever for a coordinator. But Missouri is this team that you better be. I know a lot of people don't get it, but of all the teams that have come into the league, there have been 4 new ones. They're the only one that has made it. South Carolina's made it. Arkansas's made it, but they've been there twice. Arkansas's been there 3 times. Watch out for Missouri. That's going to be a fun story. Doug, I got to ask you about Auburn on the offensive line. When you look at what Jake Thornton's trying to do, he's focusing a lot on high school, trying to build guys up. It all starts with your offensive line always. The quarterback of the offensive line, Connor Lew as a center for Auburn. That was a late grab by that staff, but I think Auburn's had some great centers over the years. Not the best athletes on the line, but they're the quarterback. Let's talk about Connor and kind of push out from there, left and right.
I'm not hearing talk. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because I'm a lot of ambient noise from my lab, Bailey, to lake noise, birds chirping.
Oh no, I got a little noise cancellation background on you, so you're.
I appreciate it, and it's needed.
Yeah, it sounds great. You sound good.
Appreciate it. Doug.
If I were inside the lake house, you'd be getting ambient noise of 2 active grandbabies, and it's delightful.
Hey, we love kids. Don't worry.
It's delightful, but it's an interference. And so Connor Lew, I think he's being written about a little bit, but it's kind of strangely a little under the radar because as a freaking true freshman, and you never I'm sure Hugh Freeze would be the first to say, boy, I love the kid's talent last year, but you'd prefer not to, in terms of strength and conditioning fundamentals, being ready to know the offense and call the offense, adjust the pass protections, all that stuff. Center is infinitely more complicated mentally between the years than you. I thought y'all would agree. It's left tackle is physically either you've got those long arm reaches and that quick first step because you've got a defensive end. I love this line from the great Joe Witt, who was under Coach Dye. But if you've got a guy coming off that edge who not only is quick, fast, and mean, but usually had a bad childhood, if you know what I mean. Yeah. He wants to kill somebody.
Hungry.
But Connor Lew, to me, that's gonna as he goes year 2, and he's gonna be stronger and quicker. He's gonna have reached his full potential physically. And I love the kid's leadership qualities. And he may be a true sophomore, but I think he's going to be one of, if not the leader on that, of what we think is an improved offensive line. And Rob, they are going after a potato famine drought under Harsin, and then Gus Malzahn considering tackle recruitment elective. Then we're tackle you at this point. Most of them are freshmen. And Andrew Babaloa, I think Auburn will land that kid a 5-star in the end. They've already got some other Malik Autry. Their teams are coming after him. Think he'll stick with Auburn. He's now a 5-star. But we got Percy Lewis, isn't that his name, Rob? The transfer
from Mississippi State. Yeah,
and he's when I see him physically, I want to see him trim that beer gut or whatever, however it got to be a gut. But you know what? You see a lot of offensive linemen who carry that around, and somehow they manage to function athletically. So I think he's going to be one to Connor Lew and Lewis on the edge. Watch those two early season. You'll probably have a good idea how improved not only the offense can be, but how improved Peyton Thorne can be. And I, by the way, am in a minority, probably 20% of Auburn people. I'm more bullish on Peyton Thorne is not becoming a Heisman candidate. That's not his ceiling, but his ceiling is surely better than we saw last year. And I think a lot of that went to the confusion with Robbie Ashford being inserted back and forth incoherently. It also went to supporting cast having no wide receiver room.
I want to back up what you just said about that.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Rob. I just wanted to jump in and say, talking about the center, the position of the center. I grew up playing ball, right? Played tight end, played a little left tackle. When I was younger, in Colorado and in Florida. I played high school football in Florida. Hey, I wore 15 at Nice High School before Tim Tebow ever did. Okay, so he got my jersy. All right.
Yes, that's right.
That was my practice jersey, Timmy. Just so you know. But the position of Florida University of Florida just went through the center position changeover. Jake Slaughter now coming in for I think it's his second year, which is a great young guy. I know his friends and family here around in Ocala, a really good young man. But Florida went through that last year. As good as a X's and O's like a blocking technique and being a good offensive lineman is important to be a center. But you're also snapping the ball, right? You're also keeping count. Guys are moving off of your movement of the ball sometimes. So you are the center of the offense from the time that the huddle is formed to you break the huddle to you take the line of scrimmage. That person is the leader until the quarterback gets the ball, and then everything's changed. And the front line, Florida went over that change, and and as good as Jake was, it's and I get tired of people talking about skilled positions and not talking about the center position, the left tackle position, and not calling those skilled positions because they have to learn every single play. They have to know every single blocking scheme. They have to know everything and communicate with the quarterback to give them proper protection. And I think it's and Florida's gone through that this last couple of years, and I think it's hurt them. I think this year people don't really understand how important that will be for them.
Brendan, it's not my show, but Rob usually is welcome.
Doug, you have complete freedom on here. You're one of my mentors, dude.
No, stop it. Stop it. It's just you're just a nice way of saying I'm old. But
no, you're like a year older than me or whatever.
But we're about to have a legendary guest on that might at least have a couple of years on me. But Brendan, you should speak up more. Don't let us keep you in the what do they say in Dirty Dancing? Nobody puts Brendan in the corner.
Don't put baby in the corner. Right. Don't put baby in the corner. Doug, your caddy and your producer, two people you never want to piss off, right?
You ain't wrong.
That's right.
But here's a tiny. It may prove to be bigger than tiny, but a little X factor that I'm also not hearing talked about a great deal. But every single offensive coordinator, head coach, and QB. I'm not sure if any defensive players get this, but they're going to have those earplugs in their head, and they get to talk to the brain trust coming up to the line, making an adjustment, calling an audible. And I think it's possible if Hugh Freeze and Peyton Thorne really drill and rep that, and I'm sure they will. They're crazy if they don't. I wouldn't just practice, and I'd run every single fall camp practice. When you're going to be scrimmaging, orange jersey, no contact or live, get completely used, try to get ahead of the game on how efficiently that can work. But I could see that lowering the stress level of quarterbacks like Peyton Thorne, who can come up to the line. They don't have to depend on adjusting themselves, because defenses with Kirby and Alabama's defenses, all of them, they love to confuse the quarterback when they come up to the line, and then come out of that set, and either they're backing coverage out or they're bringing heavy rushing. So I think that the ability to put the brain of the coach and the OC on the field in real time is going to possibly be more helpful to a guy like Thorne than we're talking about.
Well, and what a difference the communication and headset this year will be, don't you think, Doug? As far as like getting that play in faster, those seconds matter. Because you're changing positions, guys are coming and going. All things change per down, and I think the average fan kind of understands that, but doesn't really understand the intricacies now, and the level of football in the SEC that they're playing is professional football, and they are seeing professional sets, and they're having to be responsible for their position, but for everybody else's position now. And there's no excuse. And offensive line is certainly not doesn't get a pass on that deal, because if you don't have it from the get-go, and a lot of coaches will say it's from the moment the center claps his hand and you huddle up, it's the feeling that you get of unity until you get on the line and you break on the line and you get set. Those things matter in momentum. Those things matter when you're in, AYL, and those things matter when you're in professional. Getting your mindset right, and those guys have a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk to Phillip Marshall, Rob. He has seen it all, and I'm going to ask him it's not a trivia question, and his memory will quickly draw it up. But do you guys ever, I know you do you ever go back, like, not 10 years? Most of us remember games and players, but I'm going back to the 80 through 83, and it happens to be a player that may not roll off the tip of your tongue with the Georgia Bulldogs. And your Georgia fans listening are going to just love me for doing a retro on this kid. But I want to wait till Phillip is on, because he will be able to tell a war story or two about this kid.
Yeah, we're going to bring him in. I think he's going to come in audio only. But Phillip Marshall, welcome to Sidelines, SEC Sidelines Sports Network and SECU. And Doug Dean from Birmingham is on. Our executive producer, Brendan Martin, down in Ocala, Florida. And we've been talking a little college football. And I've been reading you and following you for a long, long time. And we're honored to have you, because when you speak, like the old E.F. Hutton commercial, people listen. And you're what I call a truth broker. And it's great to have you on board.
Oh, well, I appreciate it very much. Good to be here.
Absolutely. Let me start off. I want to ask you something before Doug gets there. I love what you said about Texas in Auburn Undercover, because it's in the last 14 years, Texas has had 2 double-digit win seasons. If anybody new coming in the league should be getting a lot of excitement and fanfare and love, it's Oklahoma, who's had 11 double-digit win seasons, and their 2 bad seasons were an 8- and 9-year campaign. Their worst was 6 and 7 under Brent Venables, where they lost 4 of their last 5 games by 3 points each. Boomer Sooner. Nothing against Texas, but why don't you take over from here?
Well, I just it's kind of a pet peeve of mine that there's not enough looking at the facts of what has happened with any program as compared to the perception. And the perception is that Texas is this powerhouse program, which, I mean, they've got everything it takes for sure. And they were very, very good last season, but they've had 4 losing seasons in the last 10 years. They haven't really won anything. But yet, all through that stretch, they every year that was debate, is Texas back? Is Texas back? Well, it's and usually they weren't until this past season. But then they may be great this season. I don't know, but but they've got it to do. And Oklahoma, on the other hand, has won since the Big 12 was formed in 1996. Oklahoma's won it 14 times, and Texas has won it 4 times. So it seems like, but Texas creates a lot of this themselves. They're loud and boastful and all those things, and Oklahoma not so much. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it goes. The SEC is a different animal, as we all know. So we'll see what happens when the bullets start flying.
Absolutely. Doug Dean?
Phillip Marshall, Doug Dean, normally in Birmingham, delighted to be on Lake Martin, it's a little more than a 9-iron, Rob, from Lake Martin to Auburn, but it's a short 30-minute drive. And when it's game day, we've learned to our glee, you can go the back way and not have any snarling traffic. But I wanted to compliment not only your unbelievable work, I consider you a legend in covering sports, not just Auburn. Certainly you have a probably more word count related to the Auburn Tigers perhaps than other programs. But when you talk about college football or SEC football, most of us who have been around a year or two or longer know to shut up and listen to Phillip Marshall. He does his homework. And also wanted to compliment you come from good bloodlines, Phillip. Benny Marshall.
Oh, yeah.
Benny Marshall was one heck of a writer and with a long, illustrious, award-winning career. But I wanted to do a retro when we've got enough time, Rob and Brendan, Phillip, this summer before the fall camp begins in earnest. Then we have to talk about who won the blocking drills and we know who's going to start at quarterback at Auburn, barring injury. But I want to go do a retro way back to 1980 through 83. This player popped in my head for no particular reason. And Terry Hogue played safety at Georgia. And, there are these players that come through the SEC, and he probably got overshadowed with sports coverage by the obvious great Herschel Walker and that 1980 national championship team. But Vince Dooley would say, and I just want to hear your thoughts about Hogue, because I bet you remember, Vince Dooley would say that is the greatest defensive player I've ever coached, and possibly the greatest defensive player in the early 80s that Vince Dooley had ever seen. I don't think Dooley was prone to hyperbole like some are, but do you remember that team? Because that Hogue blocked a field goal in Notre Dame field goal that helped Georgia win the national championship 17-10. Tell us what you remember about Hogue, or even that outstanding Georgia team, Phillip.
Well, I certainly remember Terry Hogue. I don't remember a lot of specific plays that I could call up, because I didn't see him play every Saturday. But I certainly remember that he was one of the great players in the SEC, and you're right, Coach Dooley thought a lot of him for sure. And I think they even had a Heisman Trophy push at one time.
They did. He finished. Sorry to interrupt, Phil, but I'm backstopping you here. I was shocked to recall this on the ultimate source for all information, Rob, Wikipedia. He was fifth that would have been, I think, 1983, fifth in the Heisman balloting as a safety. And that might be more in vogue nowadays. It's still quarterback heavy, a little bit running back. But for a safety to get on the ballot at fifth back then, my goodness.
Yeah, that was very unusual.
Phillip, what I remember about Terry Hogue was when Mike Hubbard came over to Auburn in 1984 from Georgia. Right. He had done a Heisman campaign for Terry Hogue, and I guess he took him over to Dobbins Air Base there and had him on the tarmac standing next to an F-4 Phantom. And the Heisman campaign was Terry Hogue in his Georgia uniform up against the plane. It said, America's top 2 defenders, the F-4 Phantom and Georgia defensive back Terry Hogue. I thought that was pretty damn good.
And there's an Auburn, a little bit of a connection to the state of Alabama. I didn't remember this, but Terry Hogue's college roomie, Mike Hubbard, became the first Republican Speaker of the Alabama House in 136 years. So Hogue majored in genetics at Georgia, 3.85 GPA, and he had a long, illustrious NFL career. Pivot to the Auburn Tigers, Phillip, I guess my sort of frustrated, slightly cynical take on the curious Auburn fan base, and we sometimes you could say we have met the enemy and it is us. But if I observed to some friends, I don't know if he will, but Hugh Freeze thinks he will. If with a better supporting cast, better wide receiver room, year two of getting the brain trust straightened out, addition by subtraction, frankly, with Robbie Ashford departing. And it's an all-in bet. All the poker chips are on the table with Peyton Thorne because there was not anybody in the portal that looked obvious as a big improvement. Hugh Freeze would say, but if you look at it, I would say about 70%, maybe higher, of Auburn fans are low expectation, maybe even derisive about what Peyton Thorne can do. So what if Auburn should have exceed expectations this season? I consider that 9 wins. Most people think 8 wins is a ceiling in a brutal SEC schedule. Then Peyton Thorne and Hugh will have done so without the ardent encouragement, belief, faith, and support of a big chunk of the Auburn fan base. Now that can all change in the month of September if they run it to 5-0. Talk about that decision, the quarterback play, what fans might expect as it plays out this fall, Phillip.
Well, I talked at length with you about Peyton Thorne. I've talked at length with Ken Austin about Peyton Thorne, and Ken Austin is absolutely all in with Peyton Thorne.
Wow.
He thinks that he has what it takes, and he talked about last season when all the things that Peyton had to deal with, from not being there in the spring to a dysfunctional wide receiver core to a inconsistent offensive line, and the constant shuffling of quarterbacks for a long time, which there was a long time there where he would sometimes they'd put Robbie in and he'd run 2 plays and it'd get 3rd and 7 or 3rd and 8, and then they'd put Peyton back in. Well, that's a pretty difficult situation to excel in. And but he told me a story talking about the Alabama game. He said that there was a play. He said that they knew they were going to probably run, but if Alabama was in the wrong defense, it wasn't going to work. And he said, he mentioned in passing to Peyton, if that happens, you might have this. And sure enough, it happened just that way. They called that play. Alabama was in the wrong defense. Peyton saw it immediately and hit the receiver in the face mask in the back of the end zone for what probably would have been the winning touchdown if he had caught the ball. Peyton Thorne got my attention with the way he competed against Alabama
and Georgia,
particularly. Deserved better than you got. Everybody talks about how smart he is. His teammates believe in him. Whether fans do or not, I don't mean to dismiss anybody, but they don't really have a vote. So I will actually be surprised if Peyton Thorne doesn't have a good year. Is he going to win the Heisman Trophy or something like that? I don't think so, but I certainly think that he is a better player than some Auburn fans give him credit for being. And because there's things you just don't know watching the game from afar. You don't know. People say, well, he holds the ball too long. Well, maybe he's holding the ball too long because the receiver wasn't where he was supposed to be.
Yeah.
The receivers were a mess last year, and I'm not really sure why it was that way as much as it was, because it's not like they didn't have any talent. But the whole position was just a mess, and so now I'm going. Certainly, they got more talent this year at receiver. I think they'll definitely be better on the offensive line. The biggest question to me on offense is how long Cameron Coleman's going to be a great player, but he's also a freshman. So how long is it going to take for him to be a great player? We don't, and that's true of several others. We don't know. So, because the freshman is still a freshman. But as far as Peyton Thorne goes, I think that I'll be surprised if he doesn't have a good year. I'll just put it that way, and that's based on not my own analysis because I'm not an evaluator, but on the what people who know tell me, particularly Ken Austin, who, like I said, is something of a quarterback guru, coaching guru, and he certainly believes in him.
And I think the debate where people get confused, including me, I'm not the debate was never, is Peyton Thorne, a 2024 version of Jason or much less Cam Newton, no physical comparison whatsoever. The debate is he good enough to have this team max out their ceiling, which I think is 9 wins, and that will not be easy. Heck, 9 wins is not going to be easy, a layup for almost anybody not named Georgia and probably Alabama in the league. So the debate is, can he help us avoid the New Mexico States, the games that are head scratchers? And back to your point in the Alabama game, I think you were talking about, or if not, it's a similar situation. We get down inside the red zone, I think at the 5 or 10 yard line. Auburn has a chance to go up 8 right there. That's the ball game. If they can pull that off, that's the ball. Well, at least you set yourself up for the worst case to be overtime. Right. And he didn't get any help from his receiver on a contested ball, and maybe he could have thrown it a little better. But let's see how he looks through the Arkansas game, which is game 4. And we'll know a lot more by that point, Rob.
One place I'll disagree with you. I don't know that you can throw it much better than hitting somebody in the face mask.
Yeah,
there you go. Fair enough.
I agree with that.
Phillip, but we'll see. I mean, he has it to do, and obviously you can't have any more games like New Mexico State. I kind of the bowl game. I don't. That's the way bowl games are now. I don't really put a whole lot of stock into that one way or the other, win or lose. But the New Mexico State game was inexcusable. Anybody who was played in it, coached in it, watched it, knows that. I mean, it just goes to show you better be ready to play because New Mexico State obviously it's a talent mismatch between Auburn and New Mexico State, but they had a good quarterback, had a good coach. Auburn apparently played like they just thought they could trot out there and win the game, and New Mexico State had other ideas. But that goes without saying. But that's not a first. As Nick Saban lost to UAB in his first season at LSU and lost to Louisiana Monroe in his first season in Alabama. So
yeah,
this is what you want to see.
Hugh himself said he spent the week recruiting.
Yeah,
right. You want to see this thing get better. That's what you want to see, and play better. And I don't know what record that'll be, but he says we still need to have a little patience, and I think he's right about that. But this team is certainly more talented than last season's team. Hugh is certainly more comfortable with the coaching staff, and let me say this now: the fact that they had dysfunction on the coaching staff last season, he has to wear that because he hired them.
Yeah,
and they had a plan that I've never seen work, which is, well, we're going to run part of Phillip Montgomery's offense, and we're going to run part of Hugh Freeze's offense. I've never seen that work, and and it didn't work, obviously. But my biggest questions about this team are on defense. I mean, the defensive line is more than any other. They've got it to do. They don't have anybody that has proved to be a guy that can just take over a game. And they had 2 NFL players on the defensive line last year, and they're gone. That's going to be, to me, and that's crucial. And is the offensive line going to be as much better as I expect it to be? And they too have it to do. So we'll see. They're certainly not without talent, and it's interesting about those first seasons. Pat Dye told me one time, if you think, hey, I'm old enough to remember those games. I mean, his first team went 5-6, and they lost to Wake Forest when Clayton Buford tried to return a kickoff from about 8 yards deep in the end zone and fumbled it and set up the winning touchdown for Wake Forest. They lost to Tennessee when they messed up a play on the 1 yard line in Knoxville to win the game, and they lost to Mississippi State, who was undefeated. They had the ball at midfield and had 4th and 1 and lined up like they were going to go for it, and it play trying to catch them off sides, and the center thought he had him caught and snapped the ball, and Ken Hobby, who was the quarterback, wouldn't take it because he knew they weren't supposed to snap it, and it was an illegal snap, but the problem is it was an illegal snap, but they didn't make the first down on the play, so Mississippi State just declined the penalty and got the ball there at midfield, and John Bond was the quarterback, and he took them down to win the game. So, but Dye told me that he said we should have won 8 games. He said, but if we had, he said that might not have been that good a thing because we might have thought we were further along than we actually were. So, Tommy Tuberville went 5-6 his first season. Pat Dye went 5-6 his first season. Nick Saban went 7-6 his first season. First seasons are tough, but now this is where you want to make a move. And that's not to say it's going to be a repeat of 2010 and you're going to win the national championship in his second season, but you want to see them play the game well. And there was a lot of close games, and so it's hard for me to guess at the record. I mean, they could play a lot better and still be 7-5, or they could be, as you say, 9-3. And you got to go 2 Georgia and 2 Alabama. That's obviously brutal. I think Oklahoma. Personally, I think Oklahoma is more. It might be more ready for this league than Texas is. We'll see. And but at the same time, they don't play LSU. They don't play Ole Miss. So it's a different kind of schedule. We'll see what happens.
Phillip, go ahead, Rob.
Well, I just want to say, Phillip, looking around the SEC, and you talk about, I think that's an interesting take, and I think Doug would agree. Had you gone and won 8 games your first year, you may have thought you were further along. That could affect how you recruit. And I remember those games like they were yesterday. I was in Knoxville. Auburn had the ball with a minute left inside the 4 on the goal line in that Tennessee game. The Mississippi State game, you're bringing back, you still remember those. So here's what I'm just going to say. We had a coach who's been at Ole Miss and Florida, Tyler Siskey, on the roundtable with us a couple of weeks ago. And one thing he said was he did his dissertation as a graduate assistant on the shrinking window of time that is given to new coaches today. I want to focus on one, Billy Napier at Florida. He's got a really good pedigree. He's been with Dabo. He's been with Nick Saban. He won 41 games in 4 years at University of Louisiana. And he's at Florida. He didn't get the job because Dan Mullen was doing everything right. He had to inherit a mess. He's recruiting very well. What about, do you think with this House settlement proposed $20 to $30 million payout for every school, you think maybe athletic directors are going to be a little more patient and give coaches more time? You've got a good perspective on this.
Well, you come to a point sometimes whether you are making money or losing money by keeping a coach. I think that if coaches making, Hugh Freeze makes what, $5 point something million a year. and he's a middle of the road guy pay wise.
Yeah.
When you're making them rich, then there's not going to be a lot of patience, and especially not at places that are accustomed to winning. And certainly Auburn and Florida aren't accustomed to what they've had to deal with the last 3 seasons. Now it's not all on Hugh Freeze. It's not all on. It's on. All Hugh Freeze has had 1 losing season, but Auburn's had 3. I guess Billy Napier's had 2 losing seasons, but Florida's had 3. Auburn and Florida don't expect to have losing seasons, and so and they'll come back eventually, whether it's this year, sometime both of them will, because they always have. And but sometimes it's easy to look at just like again, we'll go back to 1981 again. Yeah, Auburn had those 3 games that they didn't win; they should have won. They also stole one against Florida when the Tony Lilly caught a fumble in the air and returned it for a touchdown, and the officials blew the ball dead. So people tend to remember the games they could have won and lost. They don't remember as well the games they could have lost and won.
That's right. And Charlie Pell was not happy after that game. Remember the field goal, 14-12. I remember that quite well.
I'll tell you a story about 2 years later when Florida played at Auburn again, and Auburn had a 28-7 lead, and then ended up holding on to win 28-21. Bo had a tremendous day, but there was a play earlier in that game where Neil Anderson broke free and scored what absolutely appeared to be a touchdown to the naked eye. Everybody thought it until they showed the replay, and the ball got punched out at the 1 yard line. It was the absolute right call. And but after the game, Charlie in the locker room was livid. He said we got screwed here 2 years ago. We got screwed again today. And one of the Florida writers said, "Coach, looking at the replay, it looked like that was a good call. I don't care what the replay showed." And, it was I would say this: coaches were more colorful in those days than they are now, and
no doubt.
And, another interesting thing is coaches also, I think, got along more with each other than they do now. I mean, I know Di and early in Tuberville's days, on Monday they'd get on the phone and talk to the coach they had just played and kind of rehash the game. But I don't think that goes on much anymore. Again, there's so much money involved, and that it's there's so much at stake all the time if you're a college football coach. So my favorite quote of recent years might have been when Ed Orgeron got fired, and he said they told me they were going to pay me $16 million to leave. He said, I said, when do you want me to leave, and what door do you want me to go out of?
Yeah, that's right.
I'm afraid that's the way I'd be. But one thing I do think you're going to not see as much of is large buyouts. But here's the problem that people don't understand about buyouts. Buyouts are actually there to protect the school, because even as much as Gus Malzahn got, or this coach got, or that coach got, they would have gotten more if you just had to fulfill the terms of their contract. And so you can't have it both ways. You can't, because a contract that I can just void anytime I get ready by firing you, that's not a contract at all. So it's a little more complicated than people want to realize. Certainly Auburn has spent a lot of money on paying off coaches. So have other programs. And I think that's something they got to try to get a handle on, but I'm not really sure how you get a handle on it, because if you're committed to winning, you got to have the right coach. And if you're going to have the right coach, it's going to cost money. A lot of it.
That's
Phillip.
yeah.
Phillip, sorry, I'm going to try to reach a new demographic, Rob, for your audience, the underage 2 demographic. It's my grandson, Jack. You can
Hey,
tell
Jack.
he's a passy baby. Phillip, I wanted to, deductive reasoning is your friend, and Phillip is exceptional at that. There's, so little disclosed knowledge of what each college, let's just stick to the SEC, has in their NIL war chest, if I can call it that. We don't really have transparent information about what a given player is offered, what he actually gets. There's lawsuits about promises broken. But what I deductively reason about the Auburn Tigers, which is exciting, is that when we are losing out on big-time recruits that Hugh Freeze and his staff have targeted as A players on their list, we are here you go, Lauren. We are not losing over money by and large. Now, somebody's going to step out, and whoever that is, Colorado, Texas, Texas A&M, Ohio State, and pay stupid money. Then I hope our guys will not be stupid, because the other players see what you pay eventually. But my question is, does it appear to you, as it does me, that the surge in great recruiting overall by Hugh Freeze suggests deductively that money is not an issue for the most part? We're in that elite group of, shall we say, top 15-ish teams that can compete on NIL, Phillip?
Absolutely. And a lot of Auburn fans are convinced that that's not the case. But it is. There comes a time if you got a guy that's where you say, well, he might be worth that much to them. We don't think he's worth that much, so we're not going to pay it. And but also, I still think that there a lot of people think that it's just has become just nothing but a bidding war. I have a good friend who handles NIL matters for 3 different schools, and he tells me that the notion of how much players out of high school are getting to sign is off base. They're not getting as much as people think they are. And he's the biggest outgo of money is keeping the players you have.
Wow.
That's the biggest challenge. And then after that, transfers out of the portal.
But hey, Phillip, you feel pretty good about, if you've seen a player and he's a starter in the SEC, you feel pretty good about writing that check.
Right. But here's where I think people have gotten that I think I'll give you an example. Auburn baseball last season, before the season, they were proud that everybody on their roster had what amounted to a full scholarship. But if you combine the partial scholarship they received plus the NIL money, I think people are getting away from that. I think you got to make sure impact players are what makes a difference, and you got to make sure those guys, whether you're trying to get them or you have them, you got to make sure you keep them first, because trying to be fair and say we're gonna spread this among 85 guys, or in football, or however many in any other sport. I think most people decided that's not the way to go, and they can't do it that way. As they would like to do it that way, but they can't do it that way.
Phillip, people would be mad at us, Rob, if you don't step out on the limb, shaky one for all of us, and say, what do you think is the most likely win-loss record for Hugh Freeze and Auburn this year?
8-4 or 7-5.
Oh, I hope the former carries the day. Hugh needs to do proof of concept. Do you agree, Phillip?
To an extent. Listen, Hugh Freeze is a great recruiter. That's really how he made his name in college football, was as a recruiter. And Auburn has recruited, a former Auburn coach who's a good friend of mine, and I call it this disease that Auburn people, some Auburn coaches seem to have or have had, that, well, they can't recruit against Alabama and LSU and Georgia, so they're not going to try. And I think that's very short-sighted, and people who don't understand the allure of Auburn. And I think Hugh Freeze agrees on that, and he has gone after the best players, gotten some of them. Some of them he hadn't. That's the way it's going to be. And but he's sure in there pitching, and I think his recruiting efforts are because let's face it, in the final analysis, you don't have to have 85 players as good as Alabama's 85 players or Georgia's 85 players, but you got to have enough impact players to look them in the eye, go compete. And you're not going to do it. I mean, Brian Harsin was convinced that it didn't matter, that he was just going to develop everybody and he was going to coach everybody. Well, I didn't see much development or out coaching that I saw, but
I didn't either.
but and I sure didn't see much recruiting. So I mean, I'm not saying you have to sign 5 stars. I mean, there's a lot of guys. You got to sign guys that you believe are impact players, guys that can make a difference in a game. And if you don't have those, you're not going to win. Don't care who the coach is.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that. Doug, I know you said you've got to
bounce
to get out, and I'm going to stay on a few more minutes with Phillip after you go. But this is great stuff, because I think I read last year Auburn had $19 million in a checking account for NIL in one bank alone. So that money's it's coming in. But I think you're right. I definitely agree. And then it's backed up by what you said. It's not as much as people think it is, except to maybe a handful of people. But
hey,
Doug,
Phillip,
jump in.
I'm going to jump, but get out of here. But thank you so much for all the entertainment, amusement, and that you've provided us over the years. And keep writing, Phillip.
Yeah.
Well, I'm getting pretty old, and so,
beats the alternative.
We'll see how much longer I go, but I enjoy it, and they've been very kind to me, and at 24/7 Sports, CBS Sports, and basically I do pretty much whatever I want to. So
That's great.
And so you know, it's we'll see how much longer it lasts, but I'm not going anywhere right now. No intention of it, and
fantastic.
It's you know, it's still fun, and as long as it's still fun, I'll probably keep doing it.
Take care, guys. Happy 4th.
All right, Doug, take care. Happy 4th of July to you. We'll talk to you. Phillip, along with what you just said, I think it's so important that we have the writers. I mean, Brendan and I will be out, and hope Brendan will jump back in, my producer. But, you know, he's grown up with his dad, Buddy. I mean, you know, writing. We talked about the other night on his show, the Skywriters Tour. And Buddy said, well, Phillip's a lot younger than me, because he went on the second iteration of the Skywriters. But I really do wish that there would be a SEC documentary about, that's something Wright Thompson would be great at, about the first, second, whatever iterations of the SEC Skywriters Tours. But I love to read the printed. I love to read. I'll even print stuff off that I read that you write, because I like to underline it and put an asterisk by something or whatever. But we're hanging on every word that the great writers like you and, you know, Buddy, and, you know, I think about Furman Bisher and your dad. Golly, I think about Charles Hollis, Mark Murphy. I mean, and all just you name the writers, Tony Barnhart. That we can't ever lose that, because if we do, it's going to be like, you know, there's a lot of ingredients that go into making a great steak taste great. There's a lot that goes into making us love college football and whatever, because of the details that you write about. And you cannot get that without great writing. And I hope you never retire.
Well, you know, it's interesting. You mentioned Furman Bisher. He was, to be honest, he and my father were, how should I put this? Not the best of friends,
Yeah.
but he was always very kind to me, and when in 1996 Auburn played Army in the Independence Bowl.
Yep.
And then I was covering that, and then I was going to New Orleans to cover Florida and Florida State in the Sugar Bowl, playing for the national championship. And anyway, Furman was at the Independence Bowl. I'm not sure why, but he was there.
Interesting.
And then he because we were just talking, and he said, you know, he came like that I was going to New Orleans, and he was too. He said, "Hey, do you think I could ride over there with you?" And I said, "Well, sure." So Furman Fisher and I drove from Shreveport to New Orleans, and it was a fascinating conversation. To write like he did into his 90s.
Yes.
I'm not sure anybody will ever do that again. He had a remarkable career, and he was a remarkably talented writer.
Really, and I think it was 95. Tony said still writing, and like my 95-year-old dad's watching the show right now, and 89-year-old mother, both of them, and I also we'll be out at Media Days, Brendan and I will, and that's going to be. I hope you're going to be out there. I will say this: there's just certain people. When I see you or Tony Barnhart go up there and talk to these coaches, I just watch how they react to you. I remember a couple of years ago, Jimbo Fisher in Atlanta. You've known Jimbo since he was probably 26 years old, coaching quarterbacks, offensive coordinator at Auburn. And, you just, I think it's 48th anniversary. Congratulations for you and your wife. Yeah. And you've got 3 children and grandchildren, and I've got 4. And you know how crazy it is. I've remarried a Vol for life. My 4th kid now. Mallory's an Alabama graduate. Everybody else is Auburn. But that's life in the SEC. But I always respect how you treat people. And when I read things, there's sometimes I get mad as a fan, the fan in me. And doing this show, I got 16 I'm covering. But you have a way of slapping us upside the head and saying, hey, listen up for a second. We've been here before. We've seen this. But I watched a podcast the other day with you and Nathan King and Ronnie Sanders. Mildred, Ronnie, Paul. I got to get him on one time just to do Mildred from the old Feinbaum show. But it means a lot. That's why it's so important. And I asked Paul Feinbaum on this show a couple of months ago when Tony Barnhart and Paul Feinbaum were on here together. Why can't we have a Southern roundtable on SEC Network on Sunday mornings with writers like you, Buddy, Paul, Tony Barnhart? Why can't we have that anymore? We need that because we need substance.
Yeah, well, I don't know about Sunday mornings, but
Sunday night. Okay.
Rob, stop adding shows. No more shows, Rob.
But yeah, all those guys that you mentioned have been, they're part of the fabric of college sports in the South right now. And before us, it was other people, and it'll be other people after us. But it's a fascinating thing, and of course it is. Everything about my business has changed with the NIL and penalty-free transfers and all these things. College athletics has changed, not just college football, and it's going to change some more. And I've got my own fairly strong feelings about that, and I don't know about anybody else, but I'm really tired of and I'm not anti. Let me say this before I say this. I am not in any way anti-lawyer. My very closest friend's a lawyer, but what we have here is not really unhappy players seeking out lawyers. We have lawyers seeking out players, and when you look at like a class action lawsuit, like the House lawsuit, the only people that are going to get rich out of the House lawsuit are the lawyers in a class action suit like that. I mean, I was I got something in the mail one time from Carnival Cruise Lines, and there was some kind of class action suit that I was part of the class, quote unquote. And I said, just fill out this form and send it back. So I said, why not? So I did, and I got a check just a few weeks ago for $45.
There you go.
I don't know how many millions of dollars Carnival had to pay out, but I got $45. And and lawyers, I guarantee you got most of it.
When they're advertising that now on social media, hey, were you on this website or did you use this service? And if you did, you could get a payout if you sign this thing. I mean, they're everywhere.
Yeah, and just like now, we got these guys from long ago filing lawsuits because they're videos of games they were in have been used in advertisements. I mean, come on, man. And lost in all this is the fact that a lot of these guys, if it hadn't been for college athletics, nobody would know who they are. Nobody would care. It's as I have told a lot of people, I know hundreds of former college athletes, and I have yet to have one that didn't tell me he or she cherished the experience. Not one. And that goes all the way back to people. All they got was $15 a month laundry money. And and I got no problem with players getting paid, but the whole lawsuit thing and dredging up players are being exploited and all that garbage, and it's very unfortunate, and it has put the game in a very shaky place, and it just has, and because of that, you know, the Big Ten and the SEC are going to leave everybody else behind because they can afford $22 million a year. Yeah. Most people can't, and even in those conferences, it's going to be hard. I mean, I've talked to John Cohen 2 or 3 times. I asked him, I said, "How are you going to do this?" He said, "To be honest with you, I don't know. But what you do know is you have to do it.
Yeah,
if you're going to compete." And
you're right.
So we'll see where it all goes.
Well, Phillip, I mean, it's really interesting to me. You look at what's all the stuff going on, and then you look at season ticket sales and attendance. After a little bit of a dip in attendance, the virus, we know that factored in a little bit, but people came back like I predicted, and you did too. But season ticket sales across the country, and specifically in the SEC, are just booming. And people are doing everything in their power. You see where, like, the Nelson Club at Auburn had 71 openings this year. The last 2 spots went for $331,000 in cumulative giving. And it's not good. It's great when a veteran writer like you, who's earned your stripes, you got the respect of people, writes what you write. And I remember one time reading an article you wrote about going out to Texas when Gene Chizik was there. And you talked about how Mac Brown would ride around in a golf cart with wealthy donors and just kind of check. What do you need? All right, I'll do it. There'd be competition for it. But money alone isn't the answer. You got to have the right people, and you got to have everything. And so how fun is it going to be to see Nick Saban on game day now when he speaks? It's going to be definitely everybody will be listening. And I think he's got, in my opinion, a lot of power, that's obvious, about these players coming in. So, a good many of them aren't really developed. And if that goes out there, maybe guys will stick around longer at schools. But like, you're right. I see, you remember a guy named, you pick the player. Kurt Watson from Crossville, the Crossville Comet, played for Tennessee. See him at the Touchdown Club in Memphis, Phillip. Every week I'm there. And that guy is as excited and can tell you stories. and Paul Feinbaum, when he was there to speak to the club April 29th, he pointed out, he goes, wow, that's one of my childhood heroes growing up in Memphis. So we remember it because the writers wrote about it, and our brains, it's imprinted forever. So, yeah, just love it. And Phillip, let people know how they can keep up with you, and we'll wrap up. And I want to do this again as we get into the season. But thank you, as always, for taking time to join us. And, again, people need to be reading your stuff every day they can.
It's Auburn Undercover, Auburn.247sports.com. And it's a we take some pride. A lot of people refer to what we do as recruiting sites, and to be sure, that's important. And Christian, who does our Christian Clemente, who covers recruiting for us, does a fantastic job. And but we're not just a recruiting site; we're an Auburn news site. That's what we do. Yeah. That's what we believe we are. And we work hard at it. Everybody works hard at it. It's a lot harder than people might realize, and a lot more time consuming. Now, I have to back up and be honest and tell you, I don't work at it nearly as hard as I did when we were just getting started. And for a while, I was the only person at Auburn Undercover, and then now we have 5, and I was not kind of running things. I was running the website, and that was fun. But I got to a point where it was too much, and that's when we hired Brandon Marcello, and now, as I said, I write my column 4 or 5 days a week usually, and I cover. People laugh about this. I cover softball. The reason I cover softball is because I like it. I like the game. I like kids. It's something I enjoy doing. And other than that, I do pretty much what I want to do. So I'm grateful for that. They've been very kind to me. And as I said, how much longer I'll do it, that's we'll see. It's as I've said, the day will come when I know that I've had enough, and when that day comes, I'll know it, and that'll be it. But we're not there yet. So,
all right. Well, look, man, I look forward to. Hopefully, you'll be out in Dallas for media days. But this has been a treasure.
I'm not going to Dallas. It's too far for an old man. I'll watch it on TV along with everybody else.
Yeah. It ought to be crazy. A lot of hook 'em horns and boomer sooners out there. But all right, Phillip, we'll do it again soon. I look forward to reading your Sunday reflections and musings and everything like that, as always. Okay.
All right, Rob. Thanks for having me.
You bet, absolutely, Brendan. Let me say something about our sponsors. All of them on the website, sidelines.live. Coolmore Transportation, Trucking, Logistics, Memphis-based with a global reach. Anything that you need to have shipped in a truck. Whether it be lumber, steel coils, seed, cotton, bricks, anything that you need shipped. They get the call, they post it, and within minutes their phone blows up and they'll get it delivered to you. Hewlett and Dunn, bootandclothingcompany.com out on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. They've got lots of stuff coming in, the new stuff coming in the next month or so for the fall. Check it out. Over 7,000 pairs of boots. Got a pair of Greater Kudu boots out there the other day. The new ones that Charles had custom made. Those are really neat. And they've got them made out of alligator snapping turtle. They've got them made out of python. They are great looking stuff. And let me say something also, folks, about the Vitamin Shop, Oxford and Olive Branch. Check out all of our sponsors. Rumble Boxing Gym. We're going to have Monday, the GM who played football in college. He's got a brother on the Kansas City Chiefs. We're going to have an interesting conversation for a few minutes with him Monday. But happy 4th of July weekend to everybody. Have fun. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you bright and early again. 8
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people that help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.